500% tariffs on anybody who buys his oil or gas or petrochemicals. 500% tariff on India, on China, which buys 70% of those Russian products, and anybody else who buys them.
Fighting continues near the border in the Sumy region. Ukrainian defense forces are repelling Russian attacks, but the situation remains difficult. Russia is making slight advances, while Ukrainian soldiers continue to repel attacks. Let's see what is happening in the Sumy region now, where the fighting is taking place, and which settlements are under threat. According to Oleg Hryhorov, head of the Sumy Regional Military Administration, as of the evening of May 29th, the operational situation remains complicated, but under control. Active combat operations continue in certain areas of the border, in particular near the settlements of the Khotin and Yunikivka communities. Russia is operating in small groups, trying to penetrate border villages and gain a foothold. The situation on the line of contact is constantly changing. Sometimes we have the initiative, sometimes the Russian troops are active. But Ukrainian defense forces are holding their ground. Ukrainian armed forces, border guards, National Guard, and all components of the defense forces are heroically repelling the Russian troops, Hryhorov wrote on Facebook on the evening of May 29th. At the same time, he reported on the current situation today during a televised marathon. According to him, as of this morning, Russia is attempting to carry out offensive actions. The situation is complicated, as is usually the case during the aggressor's actions. At the same time, I am in constant communication with the military command. Therefore, despite the complexity, the situation remains under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces, Hryhorov said. When asked how many settlements in the Sumy region are currently under Russian control, the head of the Sumy Regional Military Administration did not answer and explained why. The front line is flexible, and we have constant movements, as well as successes of our armed forces of Ukraine. Therefore, I cannot provide such information at this time. We can only talk about a certain gray zone, where the most active and combat operations are taking place, said Hryhorov. At the same time, evacuation measures continue in the border areas of the Sumy region. The head of the region urged residents of the border area not to delay evacuation. This is not an easy decision, but life is the highest value. We will help everyone who needs it. No one will be left alone with their misfortune, said the head of the regional administration. According to him, a total of 202 settlements in the region are subject to evacuation. These are 18 territorial communities in 4 districts near the front line. The evacuation is proceeding very actively due to the security component. It is being organized by the police, the state emergency service, volunteer movements, public organizations, and government authorities, said Hryhorov. He reported that over 500 people were evacuated in a week, and 51 in the last 24 hours. The most active evacuation is currently taking place in the Sumy, Konotop, and Shostka districts. When asked whether there are plans to expand the forced evacuation zone, the head of the Regional Military Administration replied that the boundaries of this zone were defined by the latest order a week ago and have not changed since then. One settlement in the Konotop district, Sloboda, has been added, said Hryhorov. He noted that, if necessary, taking into account the security component, and at the request of the armed forces of Ukraine, the forced evacuation zone could be expanded. The Ukrainian analytical project Deep State reports on Russia's advance in Belovedy and Lochnia. Analysts note that Russia's activity is intensifying every day. Currently, an area of 93.11 square kilometers in the Sumy region is marked as occupied, and the gray zone covers 72.94 square kilometers. Constant pressure from the infantry is taking its toll, and previous successes are motivating the Russians to develop them, the project noted. According to Deep State, the settlements of Vodolohy, Volodymyrivka, and Kostiantynivka are currently under Russian control. They are in the gray zone, as there are active assault operations there, and there is no clear confirmation of their occupation. Analysts explain that they do not display data in real time, as the military provides varying information about the situation. Therefore, The markings on the map will be updated after the real picture of the situation on this section of the front line has been established. According to Deep State, the Russian troops are targeting the settlements of Khotin and Yunikivka. Russia has already approached the latter and is attempting to storm the village. Yunikivka has many houses that will provide the Russian troops with an opportunity to hide, gather, and fortify themselves. If the Russian troops manage to occupy this village and the surrounding heights, there is a threat of FPV drones being used against Sumy. Ukrainian defense forces are making every effort to stabilize the situation and stop Russia's advance, analysts add. As Novenka, Basivka, Vasilivka, and Zhuravka in the Sumy region have come under Russian control, the American Institute for the Study of War writes about new Russian advances. The ISW draws attention to a report by Ukrainian military observer Kostyantin Mashovets, who wrote that the Russian armed forces could occupy two villages north of Sumy, Kostyantinivka and Volodymyrivka. He also said that the following settlements in the Sumy region are still being fought over: Lokhnia, Yunikivka, Belovody, Vodolahi, and Volodymyrivka. Meanwhile, the so-called Russian military commanders, according to the Institute, claim to be advancing east of Yablunivka towards Miropolya to Novomykolaivka and allegedly west to Oleksiivka. However, ISW notes that they have not found confirmation of this information. In turn, the ISW adds that Russian troops attacked north of Sumy in the direction of Kindrativka and northeast of Sumy near Yunakivka. After Russian troops almost completely ousted the Ukrainian group from the territory of the Kursk region in March 2025, the Russians did not stop trying to break through to the Sumy region. The first key point was the village of Sverdlikovo in the Sudzha district, which Russia occupied to advance to the border and threaten the logistics of the Ukrainian defense forces. After that, the Russians tried to enter the Sumy region through the village of Novenka, and later through Zhuravka. For a long time, Ukrainian troops held the line of defense, striking at the Russian troops along the border. The border areas of the Sumy region remained a gray zone. Russians acted in small assault groups but could not gain a foothold. However, the situation changed after Russia's Vladimir Putin announced his intention to create a so-called security buffer zone along the Ukrainian border. Under this pretext, Russia launched a new offensive campaign in the Sumy region. According to RBC Ukraine's sources, during the summer and fall offensive, Russia plans to focus its main efforts on two strategic tasks. One of them is the formation of a so-called buffer 15 to 20 kilometers deep, primarily in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky recently stated that the Russian troops are now taking constant offensive actions. However, they have not been able to carry out a major operation. However, there is an accumulation of troops in the Sumy direction, for which the Russian troops were preparing. According to Zelensky, Russia is deploying 50,000 troops to the border with the Sumy region. Therefore, the Ukrainian armed forces will be in the Kursk region until the Russians want to end the war. U.S. Senator Blumenthal in Kyiv. The U.S. will impose a 500% tariff on anyone buying Russian oil and gas. China and India purchase 70% of Russia's energy exports, which directly fund Russia's war on Ukraine.
And the response of the United States Senate will be clear and unequivocal. 500% tariffs on anybody who buys his oil or gas or petrochemicals. 500% tariff on India, on China, which buys 70% of those Russian products, and anybody else who buys them. And I have been tremendously heartened by the support we've received from our European allies. They are heroes because they have said, go for it. Do the sanctions bill. Even though they continue to import some fraction of their total, maybe 10, 14%. And as Senator Graham said, we'll be discussing with those allies. We're headed to Paris from here to talk to the top leadership there. But it has to be a unified approach.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.